When the sun was going down, hurry, the sun is going down. In those days, death did not wait for hesitation. When the light began to fade, when shadows stretched longer across the stone walls, everyone knew what that meant. If the body was not ready before sunset, it would already be too late. More than 2,000 years ago, in the time of Jesus, death was never abstract. It did not happen behind curtains or machines. It was not softened by distance or silence. Death was there, in the house, in the body, in the weight of a man who had just stopped breathing. People touched death. They carried it with their own hands. And the moment the last breath left the body, everything began to move. The body was not abandoned. There were no curious crowds, only familiar hands. The body was brought inside, into a quiet room. The door was closed. Outside, life continued. Inside, time slowed. Water was brought, not for beauty, for honor. They washed the body carefully, removing the dust of the road, the dried blood, the sweat, the final marks of life. Each movement was deliberate, nothing careless, nothing cold. Everyone who touched the body knew what it meant. According to the law, they were becoming ritually impure. But no one turned away. In that world, caring for the dead mattered more than protecting oneself. The hair was combed, the eyes were closed, the mouth was gently set in place, as if even in silence, the body still deserved dignity. Fragrance before decay. Then came the oils, myrrh, aloes, not luxury, necessity. They were applied generously, enough to slow the smell of decay, enough to allow a brief farewell and the journey to the tomb. But the fragrance carried more than a practical purpose. It was a silent declaration. This body would not be treated as refuse. This body had lived, and because it had lived, it would be honored. After that, linen cloths were wrapped around the body, not to preserve it forever, only to hold it together, to keep order, to allow it to be carried with respect. A final garment, simple, quiet, grief that was heard. The silence inside the house did not last. Then the crying began. In that world, grief was not hidden. Tears were not weakness. They were the proper response to death. Family members cried out loud. Neighbors came closer. The house filled with wailing, with broken voices calling the name of the one who was gone. Death had to be heard. Silence would have meant indifference. Women were hired to mourn, not to pretend, but to ensure that sorrow was not minimized or rushed. Simple flutes sounded. High, piercing laments rose and fell. The sound filled the space and made it impossible to ignore what had happened. No one said, "Be calm." No one said, "It will pass." Loss was allowed to be loss. The final walk. Then it was time to leave. The body was placed on a stretcher. There was no sealed coffin. The linen-wrapped form was still visible. This was not a symbol. This was a person who had truly died. The procession moved through the village streets, past familiar doors, past ordinary life. As they walked, more people joined, and slowly, the crying grew quieter. Not because the pain was less, but because each step carried them further away from daily life. Everyone knew where they were going. Outside the city walls. Not because the dead were despised, but because there was a boundary. The living stayed inside. The dead rested outside. Life could not be ruled by death. The tomb of stone. The tomb stood there, familiar, never ordinary, a cave carved into limestone. a low entrance that forced everyone to bend. Inside, stone benches waited in silence. The body was placed there gently, one last time. These tombs were not used once. After months, when flesh returned to dust, the bones would be gathered and placed in stone boxes. Names were carved, because the body was not believed to be lost forever. It was waiting. Between stone and bone, there was hope. The stone that sealed everything. Then came the final act. The stone was rolled into place. Heavy. Too heavy for one person alone. Several hands pushed together until it slid into its groove and sealed the entrance. When the stone stopped, everything stopped. There was nothing left to do, nothing left to add. The stone said it all. It is finished. For humanity, this was the end. And precisely because of that, the burial of Jesus followed the customs of his time. The body was washed, anointed, wrapped, placed in a rock-cut tomb. The stone was rolled. The tomb was sealed. Guards were set. Everything that the ancient world did to secure death was done. Humanity completed its task. And precisely because everything was done correctly, fully, and finally, what happened next could not be ignored. The tomb was not a sign of defeat. It was a passage. The stone was not an obstacle. It was a witness. Death was real. And because it was real, the victory was complete.